Hello and welcome to Procrastination Station. Procrastination as in procrastinating and that other thing that we all do. If you can put it together, then you're my people, and if you can't, perhaps click that next button. No shade. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm here to talk about self-sabotage in a way that invites all parts of us to come along for the journey. I'm here to lay out the setbacks and superpowers of self-sabotage in order to manage our limitations. Throughout the show, we'll discuss designing a life that works in your favor through sustainable creative practices. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's topic. What's in your background there?
It's just like I'm in my bedroom. It's just a big canvas.
It almost looks like you're in a tent. Like camping. It's cool though.
Oh, I can kind of see that now. It's pretty cool.
It is cool. I'm gonna picture that we're having this conversation in like the middle of a forest somewhere or something.
I mean, that is right up my alley, so.
Me too. Hello and welcome. I am so excited. I have something really special for you today. I have Chad here with me. He has a brand called So Indifferent. Today, we are going to be talking about creative businesses. Chad is a creative person. He's an artist. He does all the things. I will give him a chance now to introduce himself, his business, his projects, all the things. Take it away, Chad.
Hi. So my name's Chad Hopson. I have a brand called So Indifferent, and boy, has that been a journey. What started off as a graphic design business or an attempt to do a graphic design business, it turned into a mental health focused graphic design service. And I don't really consider myself a graphic designer anymore. I consider myself more of an artist. But I think with that term, the title of an artist, I feel like there's a responsibility that comes with that. So I found a way to take everything that I've been doing over the years to give back in a way that adds value and adds positivity to the world in ways that taking creation and mental health into different forms and making it easy and accessible and engaging for people.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So what does this digital creation mental health service look like?
So it's funny because the whole brand So Indifferent started off when I was like 19. I wasn't in college at the time. I was just working, and I lost my passion for art and design and creativity because the high school I was in didn't really support that. And I remember sitting in my kitchen, my parents' place, sitting in the dining room, just trying to draw. I didn't even know how to do that anymore. And I was just trying to figure out what I was feeling because I couldn't really articulate it. And I remember looking at different words in the dictionary for depression and all this stuff, and I came across indifference, and that like summed it up completely. And I remember just drawing the logo for So Indifferent. I'm just like, man, I'm so indifferent. That's like, it's just all encompassing. But I think ultimately what started off as indifference and me not really caring allowed me to go back and find something to care about and find something to find value in, which is ultimately what has led me here. The graphic design stuff, I feel like I had an opportunity at a very young age. I think it was like 14, 15. In my grade 10 media class, that was the first time I ever learned what graphic design was. They put a picture of a magazine cover on the overhead projector and said, "Do your eyes go from here to here to here to here?" I'm like, "Yeah, my eyes did that. How'd they know?" And he's like, "They designed it like that." And I just, for some reason, that level of control and just didn't really sit right with me. And that's what kind of set me out on trying to find a more conscientious way of applying my design and my art and my creativity.
I love that so much. So it's almost like a method of ethical marketing, like to sort of remove this, I don't want to say slimy, but kind of like the slimy aspect of marketing where you're using psychology to manipulate rather than just to like highlight the product. This is the benefit. This is the feature. Do you want it? Would it be helpful for you? And if the answer is yes, please buy it. But if not, I'm not going to push you. Is that kind of like the message?
That's exactly how I think about it.
Cool.
I went to school for advertising and graphic design, and we watched a movie, a little documentary on consumerism. And I'll never forget this. They were in a factory overseas, and it had like name brand, like it was a Dior or Gucci or Chanel. They're working on sunglasses, and the only thing that separated the brands was this little plastic drawer that they put the glasses in. Aside from that, it was just the logo.
Yeah.
But I think more so, and when you think about graphic design and the ability to be able to use imagery to bypass many forms of critical thinking and to get access directly to your emotions, when you realize the power behind a symbol, that in itself should scare the crap out of anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I don't have to say, hey guys, there's a fire, like you guys need to leave. I could just put an exit, or like where's the nearest exit, we need to leave. I just put an exit sign, you'll know that the exit's over there.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So it's
of course.
so, when I was looking at that, I was like, wow, like this is like a quicker way to just kind of get an idea across, but how could this be used maliciously? And I
Yeah,
saw that in advertising.
yeah,
I
of course.
saw that in the culture. I saw that in how people would feel about particular brands and symbols, and how they respond to it when they didn't have it, and how they respond to it when they did have it. So it's just
Yeah.
very interesting, just kind of sitting back and just watching people.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I'm in marketing myself as well. I went to school for marketing admin. And when I started my business, I started with graphic design, I started networking, and then I quickly realized how much I hated it because of the amount of hustle culture, because of the difference in creative expression as well. Sometimes I would create a content plan and they'd be like, yeah, but this is great, but it doesn't speak to me or my brand. So instead I decided to pivot and start talking to people about how they market their own brands in a way that feels authentic, in a way that doesn't take too much time, and in a way that we can automate while having a strategy to make sales, so that we're not just like automating what doesn't work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
A quick business update from me. This was recorded in winter of last year, around December, I think. And since then, I have shifted my offer to include social media management packages. If you've listened to the show regularly, or even just a couple times, you've probably heard me talking about how much I hate creating people's content on their behalf. I'm actually really happy and excited about this shift because I've hired someone to help me complete the tasks involved that actually drain me. Now I get to direct my attention towards strategizing for my own business and developing strategies for my clients, which is honestly my favorite part about the whole social media aspect. This gives me the opportunity to make more money, to pay someone else's wages, which has always been a dream of mine, and to provide comprehensive, full service marketing to my clients. As an entrepreneur, when I'm doing things on my own, a lot of the time it can feel like I'm the best person for the job, that I will always do the best job. However, it makes me really excited to outsource some of the tasks that do drain me, because when we're working together and I create the plan and then they execute on that plan, it just adds for so many more eyes to be looking on the strategy to offer their own creative ideas. And I definitely believe that my clients will benefit 1,000 times more with these changes. It makes me feel just so happy and a lot more authentic in being able to offer these packages to people while also feeling like it aligns with me and my values and my skills. Business update over. Let's get back to it. Anyway, I totally resonate with what you shared about just like the advertising industry and like the psychology behind it. I really like to do things in a way that's authentic, where like your ideal customer, they're your customer because they need what you offer, because it helps them, because it's actually valuable to their life, not because you used fear tactics to convince them.
Whether it's fear tactics, whether it's a type of song, a trendy song, whatever's trending on TikTok, like now it's gotten into a realm where like I'm not saying everybody's doing this. I don't hate the advertising world. It is what it is.
Yeah. I'm still in it for a reason, but
Yeah.
I like to imagine myself in it to be able to disrupt that.
I'm
that
just
mindset.
indifferent to it. And I think for me, I'm more indifferent to a lot of external stimuli trying to gain access to my emotion.
Yeah.
That for me, I draw a hard line. So when I'm like, even now, like I'll hear a commercial that's using like a very particular, like emotional song that's been used in commercials before. And I'm like, stop that crap. Like, I think I'm at a point now where it's like, tell me what you're selling. Tell me how it could benefit me without the fluff.
Yeah.
And I'll purchase it if I need it. And I think that's where I'm at right now. Why I'm moving more away from like the term graphic designer, more to an artist, because it's taken me years to get to this point. And I think the definition of an artist has been so convoluted over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. I'm big on having my own definitions, and not to say that I'm living in my own world, but I have to line up my value system to the titles that I give to myself in terms of how I want to live my life. And I think artists and artistry should come with responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course. As the artist, you are putting perspective around a problem that otherwise cannot be described or explained. And I think that really does come with a lot of responsibility to do that ethically and to do that in a way that's conducive to supporting that problem rather than commiserating, like all of these things. I also really love the term indifferent as well. To me, that kind of says like there's this difference between head and heart. So if you're indifferent, you have no thoughts about whether this is good or this is bad or whatever. You're just indifferent. And then having that stance, it kind of brings you to a place of neutrality where then you can look at your world and observe all of the options for you and then feel what it is that would actually support you to move forward. I think that's so grand.
Exactly. It's the whole non-duality, Taoism, Buddhism. I studied like that stuff put me like, I will say this, that stuff like, because that was some of the first stuff I came in contact with after I finished college. So now I have this understanding. I had the understanding before I went to college, and now it's like I'm at the crossroads. Like what do I do now? And I think when I started to indulge in studying that stuff, because I had a hard time finding work after college, I picked up that stuff, and it really, to say it threw me into depression is an understatement. But what I will say it challenged my belief system.
Yeah.
And it challenged it to the core, because I already knew that there are certain things that didn't align, but those are the things that taste good. Those are things that feel good. Those are things that I like to see.
Yeah. And they can be really comfortable as well. You can be in this ego space of like, but I don't need to change, or I don't need to think about this so deeply. Our ego likes to fight really, really hard for those like fundamental shifts in perspective.
And I liken that to the idea of, I just had like I'm a very visual person. So I just had like an analogy for it, or like a metaphor, excuse me. It's almost like living in Canada. I know it's going to be cold out. I wear my gloves, I wear my toque, I wear my air warmers, I wear my hat, I get my scarf. But I think when I was in that process, it was just like, okay, what do I really need right now? I need my jacket. A scarf is nice to have to keep my neck warm, but the jacket is really what I need to keep me warm.
Yeah.
I can go out into this and be a little bit uncomfortable knowing that I have my jacket on. It's not going to kill me. It's going to make me a little bit uncomfortable. And I think it's just that. It's taking off the layers and going back. And it's just like, man, I will say it's been so rewarding having gone through that, because it's almost like a hero's journey.
Yeah. I'm really curious now that you give this analogy of winter wear in Canada. So that's obviously a metaphor for like your belief systems and like the things that you armor yourself with when you're going out into the world. I'm really curious, what would be your winter jacket when you're going out into these uncomfortable spaces? Does that question make sense?
No, 100. What kind of uncomfortable spaces are we talking about? Just so I can have like a mental image.
Yeah. So let's say like you're in advertising. So you're going out into a space where you're talking with clients, and maybe they're seeing you as more of like the stereotypical version of advertiser, the capitalist, the sales manipulator.
Perfect.
Like, yeah.
So I would say more sales. I don't consider myself an advertiser. I didn't really have an opportunity to get into the industry, which I'm thankful for. But I think the sales has such a negative connotation to it. It's almost like you don't care about the person. You just care more about the sale.
Yeah.
And I think the part-time job I'm doing now is actually I'm doing like a brand ambassador role.
Cool.
And the interesting thing about that I've learned about myself is I've always been in the hospitality industry, so I have no problem speaking to people. And that's why I wanted to kind of frame the context, because I'm not afraid of speaking to people. I'm actually quite comfortable putting myself out there like that. But when it comes to my work, that's another thing. We'll get to that later though. But I think the one thing I equip myself with is the fact that I know that I'm imperfectly perfect the way that I am.
Yeah.
And I'm as unique as my fingerprint. And for me to be anything other than myself will be doing a disservice to not only myself, but to the other person.
Yeah.
So it allows me to show up being me. And there's no cooler version of me than me. So just by getting that out of the way, eliminate all the negative self-talk of you should be acting like this or doing that. And my frame of reference a lot of the time is when I'm interacting with the other person. Are they engaged? Are they smiling? Are they feeling bubbly? Are they down? And I think that's something that I've been picking up on and learning more about myself, that I'm very charismatic. It's something I always knew I had some sort of charm, but I didn't really connect with the word. Actually, I knew what the word meant. I actually spent like 45 minutes like looking at definitions of the word and what it actually meant, just to get a better idea, to understand what I'm doing. But I think ultimately it's just being vulnerable. And I think when I go
Yeah,
out into the world, I have no problem being vulnerable because I know who I am and I know
yeah.
what I'm about.
I really love that. I'm in the same boat with you with that as well. I would say my winter jacket would probably be similarly my charisma. I feel like I watched a reel on Instagram recently that compared charisma to the intersection between warmth and competency.
Mm,
So for me, when I'm in an environment where I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit uncomfortable, my winter jacket, that thing that arms me against the world would be if I'm being kind and if I'm being warm and if I'm actively listening to the opportunities around me and hopping on the ones that are actually worthwhile to me. And if I'm being competent in what I'm doing, like let's say I'm not offering answers towards something that I don't completely believe in my answer for it, or if I don't completely believe that I have the answer for it, then I don't speak to them. When
hmm
I'm doing that, it does not matter if the person that I'm speaking to doesn't like me.
hmm
I used to, when I was younger, be in this space where if somebody didn't like me or if we didn't click or we didn't vibe, I would think to myself, what did I do wrong? What
Oh,
was my
God.
fault in this? I know it's awful. And
Been there. Yeah.
I think a lot of people get stuck in that space. But these days I recognize if I'm being me, if I'm just doing my thing, the right people will come to me. The right people will be attracted to me. And the wrong people won't be. And
Well, a
it's
lot of the time, the wrong people can be intimidated by you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that it's so powerful to just be your complete full self because then that gives other people permission to do the same.
Exactly.
I totally agree that when you are inauthentic, when you're not honoring yourself and your truth, then that is a disservice to not only yourself, but to other people for that exact reason. So I would love to ask another question here. What was your experience to discover your creativity?
Oh man, it was like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like the days that I thought were like the shittiest, looking back in the moment were the shittiest, but looking back, it's like, wow, like that's so cool that that happened. Like an example would be, I went camping once. So the one thing that actually first connected me back to my creativity and the self discovery was deciding to just pick up an instrument. I think looking back, and this is a revelation I actually came across just in the last couple this week actually, that I think I'm pretty like 95% sure that I deal with ADHD
Oh yeah, me too.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I thought that was depression. It wasn't depression. It was a form of ADHD, and the depression came from the fact that the emotional regulate irregulation
Yeah.
and the inability to really harness the motivation, internal motivation to do
Yes.
something.
The executive functions and
Yeah.
ADHD can also lead to a lack of dopamine, which
Yes.
feels like depression, but
Yeah.
it's like a chemical imbalance that you can't will yourself out of.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no mindset trick that's going to fix that dopamine
And
imbalance.
so imagine the amount of years that people, even myself, I won't say wasted. I don't like to say wasted. Um, experienced having to constantly bang their head against the wall thinking that it was something that it wasn't.
Yeah.
For me, I needed to I knew that if I didn't do something with my creative potential, whatever that energy was, I'd lose my mind. So I
Yeah.
always likened it to, and I drew this picture in my sketchbook years ago. I always likened it to this picture of this chaotic ball of energy just sitting in a corner. And it's
Yeah.
like those little bouncy balls from the 90s. Like if you like even just do this, like throw it at the ground, slide it goes out all over the walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's like the creative potential. That's that energy. And I
Yeah.
found that when I applied that into playing an instrument, the instrument turned from, it was no different than a pencil, and allowed me to express myself in this way where I think the most beautiful thing about listening to music is coming to the end of the song. Because when you're in that process of playing or drawing or doing anything that's where you're focused, it's almost like if I can be playing something, I can be thinking about what I'm doing tomorrow, and I have this space where I can almost kick my feet up in my head and I'm still doing the motions within my body. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
in that flow state, I've realized that okay, this energy needs to be used and applied to something externally. So music, how else can I go out into the world and do camping has been something that's been huge for me. It's just those moments of self-discovery that allow me to connect back to myself and
Yeah.
realize that there's a way or something inside me that needs to express itself. And on top of that, it's important for me to take a step back and listen without like the noise of the city, but like the noise, the sounds of nature,
Yeah. Of
just to
course.
know that I'm a part of something else. And when I leave, that whatever is there will continue to be there. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, like you can leave your mark on this world and that you're a part of something bigger. I love that so much. To me, this example of the ball in the corner that you gave the analogy of, to me it sounds like a ball of pent up kinetic energy.
Yes.
And then if you don't have this kinetic energy released, like energy can't be created or destroyed, we all know
That's
this. So if
yep.
that ball is in your heart and it's going like it's shaking and it's shivering and you don't do anything with that, that's what's going to lead you to depression, and that's what's going to leave you to feel like crap about yourself and all of these terrible, terrible things. I will say that I had a very, very similar journey with creativity. When I was growing up, my sister is like, she's always been an artist. She's always been talented. She has this very raw, creative eye.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I grew up always comparing myself to her art and to my own strengths as well, to say like art is her thing and I'm maybe good at math or something, and I would try to stay in my lane way too much until I eventually got to a point where I realized that this creative energy that my sister has is innate, not just to her but to my family. She inherited that from my mother, and I also inherited the same things from my mother. So when I was holding this piece of myself back and when I was not allowing myself to create and allowing myself to explore, I had no self-confidence. I had a very negative internal dialogue. And when I did start to find art, it was in high school, probably like an art class or something. I'm a painter, that's my medium. And I would start to paint, and like at the beginning I would really hate my own work until I would start to develop my style to be like, okay, well, what do I like about my work? How can I make this into something I enjoy? And that process of developing my style and developing what speaks to me was probably like my whole life long. Like it's definitely been something that I've been working towards literally since day one. And these days, I'm just working on not fighting it. I'm just working on allowing that creative energy to be. And something that comes to my mind now too is like, when you do have this creative spirit, it comes with an added sensitivity, which also comes with added processing needs, which means that sometimes you have drought. Sometimes you have no idea. Sometimes you don't know what to do. Sometimes that ball of kinetic energy is not moving. And that can develop into imposter syndrome. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome in our next topic, but it can feel like if I'm not creating, I'm not a creative. And I don't believe that is true. I think that as long as you have the desire to create, you're a creative. And also looking at the containers and the spaces that we put ourselves in life to be able to say, like, if I'm not creating, there might be something in my daily experience that is not conducive to support my creativity. So right, exactly.
You said something, and I think it's the key word for at least my experience, and has a negative connotation: sensitivity.
Yes,
I
it
think
has a negative connotation, but it's not negative.
I think that's what I'm saying, is important to have the definitions that you have and you believe in, despite what anybody else might say, because I think sensitivity, at least the way I think about it, has been a superpower for me.
Yeah.
That sensitivity has allowed me to play music, has allowed me to do acting, has allowed me to do everything I ever put my mind to. Anything I wanted to do as a kid, I've done it.
Yeah.
Like I'm so like, it's just, and the thing about the sensitivity thing, what I realized in acting, for example, in terms of self-discovery, is I have a tool chest of emotions. Maybe those in that tool chest were bad experiences that I've dealt with when it comes to people, relationships, whatever. I can literally go in there and take this mask from like a past relationship, put it on for a scene, allow myself to be sensitive and calibrate my sensitivity to that scene, and utilize those emotions, take my mask off, like get out of that meditative state and just be done with it.
Yeah.
That sensitivity allows me a fluidity to apply myself in ways that I would never been able to if I looked at sensitivity with a negative connotation.
Absolutely. I also think sensitivity is extremely valuable in sales.
Oh,
To
100%.
to be able to like speak to the person in front of you and recognize their pain points. In order to recognize someone else's pain points, you also need to have had pain points.
Exactly.
So to be sensitive, it allows you to observe your environment in a lens that's very, I don't know the word, like it absorbs everything. You absorb things, and then that allows you to draw on those experiences in the future. And I think sensitivity is really, really special.
Mhm.
Um,
One thing I was going to say about that, which is important too, that you touched the nail on, like you hit the nail on the head with, is the ability to absorb things in a healthy manner. Because
yes.
you're not, I think a lot of time people go to one extreme to another. I don't want to absorb anything, but I'll absorb too much and I'm taking all of this stuff on. Having gone through what you've gone through makes, and that having that sensitivity and that vulnerability that we spoke about in terms of charisma allows
Mhm.
you to take that on and put it back on the floor once that interaction is done.
Yeah. To
I
have
don't even
that
think of
boundary.
sales as like selling. I think of it more as like relationship building,
Absolutely.
because I
Absolutely.
know that you'll be back in the future. If I can create a space for you within this short little interaction where you feel seen, heard, respected, and appreciated, and just like seen as a human being for a second,
Yeah.
I know you're going to come back,
Yeah.
because whatever else is there is an extension of whatever I'm selling, not selling, but whatever I'm recommending or whatnot.
Yeah, I really love that. Now, I would love to ask you, is there something you wish you knew sooner in life to nurture your younger artist?
Oh, wow.
Or maybe even the question could be rephrased or changed in terms of perspective. Like, do you think that all of the peaks and valleys that you've experienced as a creative, these longer periods of drought, these periods where you were finding yourself in creativity, do you think all of those spaces are necessary for the way that you are creative now?
Yeah, it's so hard to say that I change anything. I don't think I would.
Yeah.
I think I think the moments where I needed to like sit my ass down and be quiet, those moments were necessary, even if it took a month, 3 months, a year, and sometimes it did take a year. I think those moments in doing that. I think the thing is, like, what I realize is it's the whole idea of like man plans, God laughs. Like
Yeah.
you have an idea of how you want to live your life, but like there's certain things that you're not even consciously aware of that
Mhm.
are making you do the things that you do. So
Yeah.
who's really in control? I think ultimately what those moments of silence and those moments of frustration, at least for me, what they've done for me is allow me to harness that anger and that frustration and utilize it in constructive and positive ways. I think that's all that So Indifferent has been. So
Yeah.
Indifferent has been a creative extension for me for Chad to step into something else where he can be in this. It's almost like, yeah, it's back to that whole image of just me being in a room with my feet kicked up. And I'm just like, my body's just going through the motion of designing something that I already
Mhm.
have the finished picture of in my head. So I'm
Mhm.
just kind of sitting there and I'm doing it. It's almost like you're driving and you're having a conversation with somebody in the back seat, and you're
Yeah.
fully aware you're going 100 kilometers an hour. You know the person on the right is getting ready to merge. You know, like the back window's slightly open. You're aware of all these things, but yet you're still driving. I likened it to that.
Yeah. I love that. I think for myself, I'm in a similar boat where I would not change a thing about my journey this far. My negative experiences have led me to where I am, so have my positive ones. But if I could give little me just one piece of advice that would aid towards my creativity, it would probably be that reinvention is my superpower.
Hmm.
That if I'm at school and I don't like the way that things are going, or if I don't like the way that people are looking at me, or if I don't like my relationships, reinvent them. You're allowed. And something that really held me back as a kid was this sort of feeling where people have this perceived expectation of who you are, and when you go against that perceived expectation, it can cause disappointment, distrust. It can make you feel like you're in the wrong for wanting to make a personal change. There's so many things that make reinvention very, very challenging. But
I'm
I think
really
it's
digging our
important.
conversation because I feel like we're very much in sync. That was literally what was going through my head like 5 minutes ago.
I
The
love that.
expectations people have of me. I think that's been like the biggest hurdle. And the reason that's why I say I wouldn't change anything is because I didn't allow those expectations to stop me.
Yeah, I love that.
I think people went like growing up, and I've spent the last 3.5 years on top of my own self discovery work, but the last 3.5 years I spent like ingrained like my like every single day, really trying to understand my experience as a black male within this society,
Yeah, of
like
course.
from the ground up. And I think when I look back at my experience, most people had an image of what they expected me to be as a black male. Of
Yeah.
course I play basketball. Of course you're
You
athletic.
like
Or of
rap
course
music
you
and
like rap music.
yeah.
So the second or of course you don't use proper English. So the second I start to speak in a way where I articulate myself in a way that feel comfortable to me, now I'm not black. Or if I listen to rock music, I'm not black. Or if I like to go snowboarding, I'm not black. If I like to do skydiving, I'm not black. If I like to go camping, I'm not. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I guess I lose my black card. I guess I'm no longer subscribed to this. Okay, now I can be free. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah. That's so
all
unfortunate though, because like there's two parts to that society where maybe you're not black enough by the black community, but then also you're still too black to fit into the other
and
communities.
that's exactly why I'm so indifferent, because I realize that I'm not going to live in this BS with these dichotomy of the two worlds. I'm going to be
Mhm,
myself.
mhm.
And through me being myself, it allowed me to gain self-confidence
Yeah.
without having to go purchase something with a symbol on it to make myself feel good.
Yeah.
That innate self-confidence comes from the fact that I skydived 3 times
That's
just because
cool.
I was terrified of heights and I wanted to fight that fear. I did it.
That's
I
cool.
taught myself how to play an instrument. I made this is something, and recently I'm just like, dude, you need to sit down and actually like bask in the fact that you wrote 2 children's books in the last 3 years.
That's
And I don't
awesome.
allow myself to celebrate these things.
You
Just
should.
always go, 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 go. But I'm learning to now.
Yeah.
You
I
know what
think
I
our
mean?
society really limits I wanna say men particularly, I'm not sure if that extends to, the Black community, I don't know, but I think that men are very, very limited from relishing in their accomplishments and from celebrating themselves. I
Mhm.
think a lot of the time it's the expectation that as a man, you're meant to celebrate the other person, you're meant to celebrate the woman, whatever, but that's bullshit, first of all. And, our our
I
wins
felt that. That was amazing.
our wins should be stretched out longer than we think necessary. If I have a win, I'm buying myself cake that night, and then I'm also throwing a party the next Saturday. Like, I need to be able to celebrate all of the little things, but not just like, "Oh, good job," but, like, to actually celebrate and to
Yeah.
actually say, like, I had an accomplishment. I did the best that I possibly could do, and it freaking worked. Like,
Mhm.
I think that that's really special, and that also gives others the permission to, first of all, celebrate themselves, but to also go after what they're looking for, what it is that they want to do. Like, wow, Chad did said he was going to do something, he did it, and he did a good job at it. Maybe I could do that. And I think that it's just very, very important to have balance between being a leader in your community, but then also carving your own friggin' path and not really caring who's watching, who's gonna follow suit, any of these things. I would actually really love to rewind a little bit from our conversation to talk about imposter syndrome and perfectionism. So, you were talking a little bit about how when you're like sitting in your room with your feet kicked up, your body's going through the motions of creation. You have this vision in your mind of what the final product will look like. How does perfectionism show up for you in your business?
Now I think, well, before it was, oh my God, it was constantly trying to get the dangling carrot in front of you. No
Yeah.
matter how far you or how fast you're running, you're never gonna be able to attain it. I think now what I've realized, I think that cracked the code, because when I made my first book, I realized that, wait up, hold up. If I'm perfectly imperfect and I'm as unique as I am, I could literally draw anything, and then that will be my stamp. Like that will be uniquely Chad's expression.
Yeah.
So I just decided to do that.
Love
Just like, I'm not gonna wait for anybody to tell me I can or cannot do anything. I
Yeah.
have the skill set and the knowledge of graphic design to use the programs to create a book. So I'm gonna do it. And
Yeah.
what I did was actually consciously went against that perfectionism and
Love that.
decided to move away from Photoshop and draw everything by hand and make it as messy and as sketchy as possible. So the
Yeah.
first book, there's eraser marks, there's pencil lines you can still see.
Love that.
The whole point of that is for someone to pick it up and be like, what the hell? Like, I can do this, then do it.
Yeah.
and do it.
Exactly.
I want you to pick the book and be like, I can do that, and do it. That's what I did. And I equipped the book with the journal and a sketchbook to get you started on it. So there's no more excuses.
Yeah. I really love that. Two things are coming to mind for imposter syndrome and perfectionism. And I'm going to lay them out right now so I don't forget them. But if you'd like me to repeat, I will. So, my two questions. First of all, how do you manage this potential discrepancy between the vision in the mind, the perfect image, and then the reality of what you can actually create? My second question, just so I don't forget, would be how do you present this work where it's not perfect, it's organic, it's perfectly imperfect? How do you present this work to people without feeling potentially a little bit threatened by imposter syndrome? Like, they could easily just do this themselves, get it done, and then I become redundant. Is that potentially a feeling that you get?
To the first question, I think one thing that I've noticed that's benefited me throughout the years, especially dealing with the depression, when I went through the depression, was being able to create reference points. So
Right.
I do that by recording something like a progress, like I'll learn to play a song and I'll record a video and look back at it years later. I think with the more so the creative stuff that I'm doing now, the thumbnails start off as the general idea, and as messy as they are, I already have the finished thing in my head. It's just a
Mhm.
process of refining it.
Right.
It's almost like turning a potato into a potato chip.
Right.
There's
Right.
a whole process of refinement, and for the most part, by the time I usually leave the computer stuff to last because I think that's where you run into more perfectionism. It's just so easy to press Control Z and undo things and crop things. I think by doing things the traditional way with the pencil and the paper, the mistakes that are there,
Yeah.
and it requires me to either go back and redo the whole thing or step into action and make something out of it.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, I could try to be as perfect as I need to be. No one's gonna. It's not gonna matter because only I. And that's what I realized. I'm like, I'll show somebody something, and I know full wet, like full. I fully know that there's a mistake on there. At least what I deem a mistake. And take a look at that. Oh, it's so cool. Like I like the colors. What about that thing there? What thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They're not really noticing any yet. So it's just me.
Yeah.
It's what I think perfectionism is. And
Absolutely.
ultimately I realized that I can create something, I put effort and time into it and show the progress. It'll be imperfectly perfect. And within that, what I've done with the books that I've done now, with the first book and the last book, they're night and day. And it shows a progression and growth. I
I
think
love
that's
that.
the most important thing. And in
Yeah.
terms of the second question, in terms of being redundant, I think what I've come to realize, I'm doing what I'm doing now for more term to long-term gratification. I think nowadays everything's short-term gratification. Trying to rewire my brain to think more long-term. And I don't ever see myself being redundant. I always see it as if somebody sends me a picture of their child or the fact that they picked up a sketchbook and drew something and they're continuing to draw, that for me is like gaining XP, like in a video game.
Yeah.
Like I'm leveling myself up. But on top of that, I think with what I'm trying to do is not only be a role model, because that in itself comes with the responsibility of putting yourself out there, but allowing people to get out of their head and get into action.
Yes.
And I think that's the main thing. And if I do something and you benefit from it, that's great. That's I don't need anything else from that. I just need to
Yeah.
know that you benefited. That's great. I'm
Yeah.
not here to get accolades or anything like that. Um, I just think for me it's beautiful being able to teach somebody like how to dance or teach them how to play an instrument and go to that first show of theirs and sit back and be like, wow, like that's really cool to see that I had an impact on that person's life.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is what I'm more into in terms
For
of
sure.
long-term gratification.
Like collaboration compared to competition and
Mhm.
impact is really so important. I really love the word that you used, which was refinement
Oh
when
yeah,
you were
process
talking
of
about
refinement.
perfectionism. I think that perfectionism, it is what it is. Like if you are a perfectionist, you're always going to be a perfectionist, at least a little bit. But I think that the biggest thing with perfectionism is when you are taking on a project, when you're working on something, all you can guarantee yourself is to do your best.
That's
That's
it.
the least that you can do. And then when you're doing something long term, like let's say you're making children's books, you're making a second one now, you can reflect on your past work and be like, how can I refine this further to be better this time? And that doesn't mean to say that you shame yourself for being where you were when you started, because you did your best. If you said
Mhm.
to any one of your friends, I did my best on this, how can I improve? And they said anything other than it's perfect, you probably wouldn't want to be friends with that person.
Exactly. And on top of that, I cancel out the like monkey chatter in my brain by showing the fact that, look, I didn't say I was a professional at this. I'm not even a children's book author. I just decided to do it.
Yeah.
Here's what it looked like in the beginning. I think it looks like crap, but here's what it looks like now after putting like 2, 3 years into refining my illustration skills and working on it and making it come to life. Like it's night and day.
Yeah.
And I think by just like canceling out or having the case study is enough to cancel out the imposter syndrome because I know I've done it. I don't
Yeah.
have to prove it to anybody else.
Yeah. I feel like the biggest thing with imposter syndrome is that your brain needs proof. So if you want to break through imposter syndrome, you need to seek proof that it's possible for you to do this thing that you feel limited to do. And sometimes imposter syndrome can start because you're doing something that you don't know if you're 100% qualified to do it.
Mhm.
And as you prove to yourself your qualifications, the easier it becomes to not feel like you're an imposter. And I really, really love that. I'm curious, how do you manage? Did you have something to say actually?
I was actually going to say, I think recently now, the last time imposter syndrome has popped up is trying to go out and promote the book. Because I'm not a parent, I don't have kids.
Yeah.
Why am I making children's books about
Yeah.
whatever? But I realized that, like like what you said, like having lived through the experience or having gone through experience, that gives you an ability to go into that arena as a
Yeah.
thought leader and as someone that has something to say. And it might not even be a game changer. I'm not saying that this is going to cure cancer or cure all mental health, but I think the initial idea that I had was to how could I make Toronto a little bit better in terms of mental health
Yeah.
and mental illness? How could I at least add? Can I? Is there something that I can do where I can add something or at least just another option? There has to be another way. And I think just looking at it like that has just been a game changer. Because if you go to Tim Hortons or any kind of bakery, for example, there's so many types of cookies or donuts. If I can add like adding a marshmallow to a donut, you just invented a new a new product for sale. You're just adding one more thing to an already um, over overly saturated market. But the fact that you have it at your shop, that allows you to stand out a bit more.
Yeah, of course. And I will also say you mentioned like selling your book can be a little challenging because you're not a parent. I think that one of the most or one of the qualities that makes us most qualified to speak about children and raising children and all of these things is the fact that we were once a child. I am a recent graduate of being a child. So I think that I have some perspectives on what it means to be a kid in this world that could help kids, things lessons that I've learned from being a kid in my past
Mhm.
that are honestly important lessons. And I think especially when you were a sensitive child, you picked up on problems that you didn't necessarily have the vocabulary or the power to be able to speak to. So now that you're an adult, you give that gift to yourself to be able to speak to these problems because you've given yourself that power to be able to have that voice. When you're a kid, you're silenced, seen, not heard. So
Mhm.
you have to be able to have this outlet for yourself to heal that little guy that was told to be quiet, or for me to be able to speak to these problems that I knew were a problem, but nobody really listened to me because I was 10. What do I know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes parents can be a little bit protective over their methods and over their child, and they should be. Being a parent is hard, mad respect. But I also think that sharing stories and lessons is a really good way for people to be able to face their perception and then to hopefully release some of those fundamentals that might be holding themselves back in life or back from connecting with their child or whatever it might be. I would really love to ask about value-based businesses. Now, we did talk about this a little bit at the beginning with like ethical marketing and stuff like that. What does value-based business mean to you?
I think value, Elliot, I mean, we touched on it earlier. I think the value, this is why the way I think about it, I think value-based business just cuts through the crap, gets to the point of how you can actually benefit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, especially now, there's so much like frills and thrills and all of this like fluff to get to like this tiny little thing that says, and once I finally get to it, I realize that it's not something that's actually going to benefit me.
Yeah.
I think now there's just so much consumption that requires a bit more discernment.
Right.
I think
Discernment, not judgment.
yeah, that's the key word. Because not everything that's for sale is necessarily beneficial to you. But I think just offering, like going back to the heart of it, offering real value. And I think one thing that is super important to me is, and something I'd say all the time, is a value system. I
Yeah.
think throughout my entire creative life and well into childhood, like I was driven by a value system that was laid by my parents, my family, and my teachers in my elementary school, who I visited a couple of years ago. And some of them are still there. Like
Love
it's
that.
mind blowing. But they laid an amazing foundation for me to be the guy that I am today.
Yeah.
Like they allowed me to express myself. They allowed me to have the space to kind of show up and be myself. And when I look back and taking those things and applying it to what I'm doing now, I think I'm moved by not only seeing growth in other people, but community, self-expression, positive self-expression, because not everything needs to be said.
Yeah.
Especially at the detriment of your business, and ultimately just giving back to the community. And
Yeah.
another thing I think I realized as well is more recently, like social media for per se, like Instagram for example, isn't really aligned with my value system.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that I lost my account a couple weeks ago was actually like a gift in disguise, if I think about it. And I think in coming to that realization, it allowed me to kind of go back and do things from a more traditional standpoint, which is going out there, shaking hands, looking somebody in the eye and saying, this is what I made. I think it'd be very beneficial to you. And I think the selling isn't coming from a sales and numbers thing where I need to sell 5 of these or 6 of these a day in order to make my money back. It's like, no, I actually care.
Mhm.
This is stuff that
Yeah.
I've gone through. This is what I went through. And I think that feeling of you caring can undoubtedly come across in every interaction you have. Like
Of
people,
course.
I can't promote something I don't believe in. I just can't. And
Yeah.
people will be able to pick up on that. But I
Yeah.
think when they know that you care, that's something that where you can just show up and be yourself and not have to worry about trying to sell anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the word you use, discernment. I think discernment is a really great alternative to judgment. And I also think that it really pairs well with alignment. Like you're discerning alignment. When you're selling to somebody, you're identifying if they have the problem that I have solutions to. If they do, great. It's an easy sell. If they don't, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to pressure them. And like for I can even give an example. So I worked at a baby store for a little while. They didn't sell babies. They sold baby clothes. And so they were selling baby clothes. So I would talk to customers and they were like, "Oh, these are so cute, lovely, great quality. Don't know any babies." I'm like, "Great. Have a nice day." And it's not like a personal rejection. It's that my product does not align with their needs. If they knew a
Mhm.
baby, I'm sure they would have bought something, but they don't. So that's not a problem. That's not something that I need to take as rejection or take personally, and it's not something they should feel guilty for, and it's not something that I need to push. Uh,
Exactly.
I think sometimes in sales tactics, the idea is to push, to drive the idea home that what I have is what you need, and I'm going to convince you that this is something you need, not just something you want, but that you'll be worse off for not having it. And I think that with value-based business, like a really big component to that is recognizing that there's like a million people out there that do a million things and they all have like maybe they have a different product or a different solution, but they will get to the same result. Everybody wants to be happy, healthy, and that's it, right? They want to have a lot of money. Like, there's a million ways to do all of those things.
Mhm.
So, as a consumer, as well as a business owner, I think it's my responsibility to sell and to also buy products that align with those values, that align with what a happy life looks like to me personally. I'm curious how we create value for our audience while simultaneously creating value for ourselves. Is there a potential for that to be mutually exclusive, or is it possible?
How to create value for other people while also
Like,
creating value.
can a value-based business be operated on mutual benefit?
Yeah, 100%. I can think my mutual benefit is seeing the fact that when you grow, I grow.
Yeah.
When you win, I win. I think when I look at it from that perspective, because I think nowadays everything's so individualistic.
Yeah.
When you win, I'm mad. Or if I win, you're mad. It's just so there's not a lot of compassion. And that's why I say Instagram doesn't really align with my values. I'm not gonna take everything that I've done and all the work that I've been able to do over the years and break that down into a grid with and base that on someone else's value system in regards to likes or comments and all that other stuff. Like the fact that you can buy followers, like it's just you're setting yourself up for a world of like just mental anguish.
Yeah.
It's like so I'm avoiding all of that. I think if it's like I said with the analogy, like if I taught somebody how to play like that's another thing. I had a YouTube. Well, I still have it up. I have a YouTube channel where I just started playing bass in my bedroom. I just picked up my bass and started learning songs. And over the years, you can see the growth and progression.
Mhm.
And I have a buddy I actually did an interview. His name's Sean on my podcast, Uncovering Creativity. And we were talking. He's like, "Yeah, dude. Like, I saw your videos on YouTube, and I wanted to play because you're the only person covering this one particular band. It was Dance Gavin Dance." And he's like, "Yeah, man, it was so inspiring. And there's people here that know about you. And when I said I was gonna be, it's just like for me, it's like the fact that you even decided to continue to play an instrument, and and you benefited from watching a 3-minute video that I did. I've already won, and I
Yeah.
think that's where my fulfillment comes in because I can go out, sell a bunch of books, buy PlayStation 5 and get the VR headset and all the fancy stuff and sit there and not feel fulfilled. I can feel happy and I can feel the thrill and the excitement of being able to play a video game, but that fulfillment doesn't really,
Yeah.
it's not there. And I think the one thing that changed my entire perspective was back in 2020 when it was just around the time before I released the first book. My nephew was like, I'm like, "Hey, what is I, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want me to get you for Christmas?" He's like, "I want you to get me your book." I was like, "Holy shit." Damn, that
I
hit
won.
but I was like, "Damn, that hits very differently." Because it's like he could have asked for like a Game Boy or like um
Money.
money, a Nintendo Switch, but he's like, "I want your book." I was like, "Damn, like I can't relate to anybody because there's no one else that I know is writing a book." It's like, what did you like a younger person in your family say they wanted something? Like it just hit differently. And when I
Yeah.
realized that feeling was something that was basically something that I was experiencing at the time, it just allowed me to kind of feel more fulfillment knowing that I'm giving something that it's ultimately like the hero's journey, like the fact that I went through all this creative stuff and all this emotional turmoil to get to a point where someone in my family, a younger person, was like, "I want the thing that you went through this entire cave and this whole process of going through this refinement. I want the thing that came out at the end. I want you to give me that." It's
Yeah.
like, holy crap. Damn. There's nothing you can't put money on that. And I
No.
think that's ultimately about what I've been able to do is set myself up in a way where you can't put money on what I'm offering you. Like
Mhm.
if I said how much if you wanted to spend an hour with your child with no distractions whatsoever, how much would you pay for that? You put however much money down just to
Yeah.
do that. And I think that's what I've been able to do.
I love that.
I don't need to convince anybody of anything.
Yeah. So, from listening to you, it sounds like the balance between like mutual benefit comes from a balance in inspiration and fulfillment.
Yes.
So, the balance comes from you inspiring others, and then that comes with a feeling of fulfillment in return. And I really think that is so, so special. The reason that I ask this question about like mutual benefit and creating value for people and everything is I just think that there's a lot of misconception in business. I think that there's sort of two frames of mind. There's the people who are out there and they only care about the sale. They only care about the person that is going to give the money. Um or or caring about the bottom line in general. And then there's the other person who is um like to the other side of the extreme of value-based, where it's like, I don't even care if I make money, I just want you to find benefit from this. And I think that in business, it is really, really important to have a sales strategy, to be able to value your own time and to value your own work, to be able to say, like, I'm giving somebody something that I created. I'm giving somebody something that will benefit them, and it has to actually benefit them. So hopefully you are aware of your customers' pain points and all these things. But I if I'm giving somebody something that they will actually benefit from, I should also benefit from it if I've put my time into creating this thing. I think that there's some almost like spiritual business type
Oh, 100%.
people, and like with that comes almost like a feeling of guilt when you want to ask for money, and a feeling of like wanting to put your ego aside to be able to just serve your community and it doesn't matter what you get in return. I think that's bullshit. I think that
It is. It is 100%.
it's so bullshit. A business is in business to make money. You have to be making profit in order to be considered a, like a functional business. And you can't do that by not putting a price to your product and by not putting value towards the time and energy you put towards creating something. I think like the main key with value-based business is exactly like you said, the intersectionality between fulfillment and inspiration. And then it also comes from like everything that we've said, alignment with your customer, understanding their pain points, and then actually serving them products that will serve those pain points. Um, for me, within my own business, I've been really learning to hone in on what my customer looks like. I'm tired of wasting time with people who are not my actual customer. Sure, I can help them, but that doesn't mean I should be helping them. I need to be finding the person who will help me in the best way that I need, not just because I could help them. I could learn what's necessary.
Hmm.
I think value-based business, it's so, so important to value your customer, to value your message, but it's also important to value yourself.
And that's exactly why it's important in terms of the value-based businesses to find the people that align with your value system,
Yeah.
because they're not going to let you get away without giving you some value in return for what you're offering them, because they understand that, wow, like you went through this whole thing to get to this, and I'm seeing the benefits in the person I'm giving this thing to. Like, here, take my money.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how else can I support you? And I think that's ultimately what I'm looking for, and that's why community is important, because I think nowadays, like I said earlier, with the whole individualistic, everyone's just trapped in individualism.
I feel like we
Community.
could have a real good podcast on hyper individualism.
Oh yeah, yeah, we could talk about this for hours. But I think it's coming. What I'm noticing online are like a lot of these, like, sign up for this course and you'll learn how to do this, but like you'll be a part of a community, but it's all profit driven. They
Yes.
don't care about you. The second you're not able to pay that 1 month subscription fee, you're out. Whereas communities, like, you know what, you can't really make it this month. We still want you to be here, pay what you can, come in next month, because I believe in you and I believe in the value that you're putting out. And I think when people hear that, that only not only does it inspire them, but inspires them to continue to do what they're doing. And in turn will eventually come back to you in terms of value. I
Yeah,
think it's a reciprocal thing.
I think so too. And I think that, like, in this example where let's say you're managing a community and somebody can't make their subscription that month, like if you did let them stay, let's say you discounted it by like 90%, all they could pay was like maybe $100. Then eventually, after they've found the benefit from your community, after they've grown, they may even be willing to recommend like their 50 closest friends to you. They
And
might.
that costs nothing.
Exactly. It was literally a free lead generation just by being like a genuinely good person.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now to move us on to nurturing creativity. So I would love to ask you, how do you nurture your creativity to sustainably create within your business?
I touched on it earlier. I think for me, what's been super important over the last couple of years, well, like the last like 9, 10 years, is taking a step away from everything and
Mhm.
going like solo camping or doing like a solo experience for a couple of days. I usually go try to do solo camping.
Yeah.
Um,
You taught I saw one of your videos on your YouTube channel about when you went to St. Vincent and
yeah,
like checking out your heritage. I really love like the self-isolation to be able to nurture creativity. But I interrupted. Continue.
Because I think a lot of the time, I think the one thing that I realized that St. Vincent trip was transformative because it allowed me to start to do other like solo adventures in Canada.
Hmm.
I remember I went to a little cabin up north. It was in the middle of the woods. I was by myself, and I remember just walking around the property, and it came to the conclusion. I was like, wait a minute, like now I understand why it's so important for me to spend time with myself because the thoughts that I was having coming up here were, aren't you afraid of somebody? Well, coming from other people, or aren't you afraid that someone's going to murder you? Aren't you afraid of the bears and all this other stuff? But it's like I accepted all of those things the moment I selected pay now. like like I dealt with all those things, and the fact that there were those things being compounded on things I've already taken care of were from other people. What I realized was there's so much static. I lost that frequency of deeper understanding from with my I lost my own voice.
Yeah.
Lost
Yeah.
I didn't know where I was coming from. And I think by taking a step back allowed me to connect with what was important. And I go back to that St. Vincent trip because that made me realize that, okay, wow, like I understand why my parents left this beautiful island to come to Canada. I understand the seasons and everything, but it was for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Like here, I literally can create a clothing store online and someone
Mhm.
like there's so much I can do here. So like
Yeah.
is the
And not
reason
even just an online clothing store in Canada, but a global one
global.
from Canada.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
everybody knows Canada. Not many people are aware of St. Vincent.
And it's just like the ability for me to garner a reach that's well beyond the I think 60 or 100,000 people that are there on the island. It's
Wow.
just it really kind of like it's funny. I think St. Vincent has the same population of Sudbury, Ontario.
That's hilarious.
But it just comes to that realization. I think the more time that I spent by myself, it really allowed me to check in with myself, understand my value system and what's important to me. And on top of that, reframe things. So I went camping once and it rained. There was a hole in my tent. My shoes got wet. I didn't bring seasoning to season the food that I had. So I had chicken that was like
Like made by my
unseasoned.
grandma.
Yeah, it was unseasoned. It was brutal. But the one thing I remember is sitting outside the tent, and it was night, and the moon was just lit up the whole field. And I remember driving home, and then a couple months later, I'm like, wow, like as shitty as that was, and as cold as I was in my tent, shivering, man, that was such a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
It allowed me to reframe certain things in a way that made sense to me. Because I could tell that story to someone else, be like, "Yo, dude, you're crazy. I would have went home." It's like, no, man, that was beautiful to me. I
Yeah.
don't expect someone to see the same thing that I see and see beauty in it.
Yeah.
So that allowed me to kind of regain control over that and reclaim a power of being able to just put my foot down and say, you know what, I don't think that's cool, or I don't think that's nice, or just allow me to be myself. And I think that's
Yeah.
ultimately what that connected me to.
Yeah. I'm in totally the same boat. I really, really love that. I think the two main things that you mentioned are really great at like nurturing creativity. First thing you said was solo time, and the second thing you said was being with nature. I love to practice both of those things. I find that like being in nature, it just really allows you to connect with the universe. It allows you to feel like you're connected to the bigger picture of life, to that web of life. And it really, like, it does the same thing for me. It really allows me to isolate which voice in my head is actually my own and which is all of
Definitely.
the chatter that is given to me unwittingly. And there's times in my life where I haven't taken this solo space, where I haven't been out in nature, and then I really lose myself, where I start to go with the flow of what it feels like the expectation of me is telling me to go, rather than to actually stop and listen and analyze and reflect on what it is that I actually want. Something that I talk about on this show quite a bit is the difference between thoughts and feelings. And for me, being alone and being with nature, it really allows me to quiet down those thoughts and just focus on what I feel. And to me, that is where art comes from. Art does not come from what you think. It doesn't come from like all of your assumptions of the world. It comes from your heart. It comes from what all of those thoughts made you feel. And It's just it's so important as a creative to find that thing that really fills your cup. Another thing too is when you're working on a project, if you're dealing with creative blocks, if you're dealing with drought and you want ideas but you don't have any ideas, just put it down.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever lost your car keys and you're like searching the house and you're like, "Oh my god, I need to find these keys. I'm late for work." And you're running and running, running, trying to find them. You can't find them anywhere. If you just like went outside and breathed for like 2 minutes and you're like, what's the trees look like today? And you just step away for a moment, you come back, you will probably find your keys in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
This has happened to me on almost a daily basis. So I just think that stepping away, it really gives you time to process those feelings so that they're not overwhelming when you're trying to think about the spot that you left your keys.
Hmm.
And it also gives you space to allow the keys to tell you where they are, to
Yeah.
not have to remember, but to just be like, "What's a logical place that I probably put these?" And then eventually you find them, and it's just, like, a matter of balancing the need to act on the inspiration that you have, and then also to process that inspiration, to be able to say, like, "Where is this coming from within me? What am I tapping into when I feel inspired by this?" And then to expand on that. To me, it's like a balance between expansion and contraction. Sometimes you're out there, you're doing things, you're meeting people, you're talking to people, and then other times you're contracting, you're processing, you're listening, you're in your shell a little bit. And to me, that is the lifestyle of an artist. That's the lifestyle of a sensitive. That's somebody who takes in what they observe from the world and then has to process that in order to let it go, and whatever they're left with is what's true to them.
Hmm.
How do you manage your creative blocks? Did we talk about that already?
How do I manage my creative blocks?
Do you get creative blocks? It seems like you're creative through and through.
I lost it for a while. I think the last creative block I had was finishing up the second book. I had all the drawings done, but I didn't have the last page finished. I didn't know I had like the background finished, but I didn't have the actual characters in place.
Yeah.
Um, because I internally I didn't want to sell a story that I didn't believe in. Like how could I sell a story about discovering something that is true to me when I haven't even found it or haven't even accepted it? And I think that was the block. It was the fact that like I didn't accept it internally. But once I did accept it, understand like, oh wow, like that's okay, I get it. That is me. And I put the pieces together, then the flow came back. It was
Yeah.
just like a little blockage. I had to go down there and like get my gloves on and like take the leaves out of the off the sewer grate. But after I did that, all the flow came back.
I love that. Can
And I
I
think
ask, like,
and
was there a tangible thing that you did to get that flow to come back?
you know what? Actually, we were up at Blue Mountain. We had gone away and we were just I was working on some stuff for the book and at least I was trying to. And then America's Got Talent was on.
Mhm.
And there's this group, I think it was called 4A Chord or A Chord or something like that. It was three guys. And they're like this gospel, like their voice is just like amazing. And I went on their Instagram and I saw I'm gonna send this to you afterwards.
If you're listening to this, Chad, reminder to drop those links you mentioned. Please do.
Um, and I came across this song and I was listening to it and I literally got emotional.
I love
So
that.
I looked at what I was drawing and where I was in the book, and I was listening to the song. I'm like, wow, like this emotion, this feeling from this song goes hand in hand with the ending portion of the book. And
Yeah,
that for me was like, okay, I get it now.
I love that so
I get
much.
it now.
I love that. I feel like a lot of the time, the inspiration that takes us out of a creative block can come from the randomest place. Like, it can come from TV, from YouTube, from music, from going outside, from talking to a friend, from reading a book, like literally anything. And part of the challenge of being a creative is trusting that that answer will come to you when you're ready. So
You
I
can't
think
push it. You
you
can't
can't
push
push
it. You
it.
can't
You
force
can't
it.
push it because you have to move so much dirt to get to the gold of what it is that you're looking for, that you might as well just sort of sit and feel into it and hope and wait that the gold eventually finds you. And like the example of the keys, when you're not looking is when it finds you. And I think that, um, mm, I had a thought, now it's sort of losing me.
I came across a song on their Instagram page,
Yeah,
and it's funny because they're actually singing it in a stairwell because
cool.
the
The
um,
acoustics.
the reverb and the acoustics, it sounded amazing. But I remember listening to it, and then I just looked at the book and then looked at what I was doing, and it's just like, oh my god. Like, even just thinking about it now, it was such like a spiritual. This whole experience, I'm not gonna lie to you, has been one hell of a spiritual journey
For
because I
sure.
can't even begin to describe some of the things that happened to me while I was working on this book and things that I've learned about myself. But I
For sure.
think it was able to tap into something that allowed me to see the importance of putting myself in my book and realizing that the emotional block that I was looking at was the fact that I was afraid
Yeah.
of allowing myself to be that or to be seen.
Yeah. I think I think this is actually what I was trying to say earlier. When we are experiencing creative blocks, I think sometimes we want some type of a reason for experiencing that creative block. I don't think that there is always a reason. Sometimes it's just you're tapped out of your energy for the day. But I also believe that when we're experiencing a creative block, it can sometimes come from like a lack of information where we need some type of personal gratification or personal evolution to be able to finish this book, for example. So if you sit there and you're writing your book and you try and force yourself to look at this page until it's done, you're not ready for it to be done. You need to go out there and experience a little bit more before you can come home and then see the page for what it really is. And I think for creatives, a lot of the time, they want to use force when they need to use flow. And you can't force anything when it comes to art. It really does need to flow when you're doing it, when you're creating a career out of this. I want to say before we wrap up that I really respect you for creating a career out of your creativity. I know for myself, I'm a creative through and through. I will always be a creative. That will never ever change. But when it comes to my work and when it comes to my job, when I am doing something for money, like if I started to sell my paintings, for example, I don't know if I would still be so passionate about them because then I'm doing it for work.
Oh god. I will say this, for me, I knew very early on that if I and it keeps going back to the depression, but it wasn't the depression, but it was the depression at the time. If I don't get a hold of this depression and understand it, why it is what it is, there's no point in me carrying on because it's gonna interject itself somewhere in my future and in my life and just present itself as a roadblock if I don't spend the time trying to understand it.
Of
What
course.
I In terms of my creative stuff, what I realize is I don't like doing graphic design for people most of the time because a lot of time they don't value it and they
Mhm.
don't really understand the depth of self-discovery and the shit that I had to go through mentally and emotionally to get to the point where I'm able to whip something up in like 10 minutes.
Of course.
But with all of that being said, now that I have something that fulfills me, I can put I don't have a problem going to a job and doing what I need to do to get paid. I think of
Yeah.
work, funny enough, is like a prison sentence. We all have to serve that time. We have to. While
Yeah.
we're here, we need to put time in to be able to get exchange our energy for money. But I think when you tackle that one thing and you find that one thing that's fulfillment, it allows you to look at your work as work and allow you to kind of create that separation between the two. Because the one thing of getting caught up in molding the two together and making your art a business and selling, it's just from my own personal experience, like looking back at that shit was so stressful because you're tapping out, you're burning out. It's all about becoming a product. And I don't see
Yeah.
myself as a product. I'm an artist.
Of course. I know lots of art businesses, and that's very, very challenging of putting themselves in the box of having just one product, one main goal, one customer when they're like, I'm an artist, bro. I evolve every single day. That's just really, really beautiful. I think this is really magical. Do you have anything on the topics that we've touched in previously? Anything you didn't get a chance to share? Anything at all that you want to say before we wrap up?
I think the only thing that I would say is I cannot stress the importance of being yourself. And I want, on top of that, I want to say this whole idea of showing up as your authentic self, I think personally is bullshit. You can't show up as your authentic self everywhere.
Yeah,
So
of
don't.
course.
I think people think I want to be my authentic self and I'm going to be myself everywhere. And you can't do that. I can't go to my job and be my authentic self. It'll piss a lot of people off.
Yeah,
Right?
authentic self believes in fairies and dragons. Like
Yeah.
I am not allowed to be my authentic self in society, and that's okay. That is totally fine. I do need to find spaces where I can be authentic. I
Mhm.
need people where it's safe to be authentic.
Exactly.
But I also need to know how to augment my personality to fit into the containers that life presents to me.
Exactly. And I think when you have that ability to tap into that and you understand your authentic self, I think it's important to realize that being you is probably the most important thing out there. There's no one else that looks like you, or well, it might be people that look like you. There's no one else that has your spirit and your gift and
Yeah.
your fingerprint in this world. And I think once you realize that whatever you do, whatever it is, whatever you decide to put out of the world creatively, that's your stamp on this world, and that's the mark that you can leave.
Yeah.
I like the last thing I'll leave it is almost like you don't want to be the way I think about it. Just I want to create a ripple with throwing a little pebble into a lake or a little puddle of water and be that small ripple. I don't want to be the asshole that's going to come by and throw a boulder in. There's a huge difference between creating a ripple and whatever the hell that guy's doing
A
throwing boulders in.
tsunami.
Because it leaves, at least it's gentle enough to create a reference point, but on top of that, it's gentle enough to still keep the still water still, but allow room for someone else to kind of show up as well without causing too much of a disturbance.
Yeah. On a side note, this makes me think about a quote. To paraphrase, it goes, "Those who lead today are able to see farther because they stand on the shoulders of giants." When you're a thought leader, an artist, a podcaster, anyone with a voice that contributes to the tilt of our society, someone with sway. First of all, you might not even recognize this about yourself. It took me until 24 to realize that my cadence naturally has an authoritative tone. This is why in work, regardless of the container I'm asked to fill, I always find myself in a role that holds some special responsibility, like key holder, manager, project coordinator, that one role that didn't quite exist yet in a tech startup that I showed up to carve space for myself, coach, consultant, and mentor, all of the phases and hats that I've worn that brought me throughout life. As an entrepreneur, at the beginning of my journey, I found myself wanting to make a big splash, wanting to innovate, to lead, to honor my inner mad scientist that goes against the grain. Until one of my mentors mentioned this quote: "You stand on the shoulders of giants." You can make a big splash in business, but it's culminative. It's a ripple effect. One small impact leads to another, and suddenly you've created change in the world. But when you're setting out and your goal is total and complete domination, the world becomes massive. The heartbeat of the city courses through your veins and drowns out your own creative force. When you're in it to see that sparkle in someone's eye when you drive the ball home for them and you're focused on your own lane, to evolve your solutions as the customer evolves. The ripple effect of relationship building leads to the tsunami impact of community. This tangent is to say, I agree with Chad. Don't be the boulder in someone's rock skipping lake, but be the pebble skimming the top that creates more impact by going the distance with every skip. What you said about authenticity, it really made me think. I have a friend who is gay. They're very gay, and they are a drag queen in their part-time life, but then in their professional life they like to present very masculine, they like to present like they're not gay at all, and they like to hide that version of themselves for the sake of their own mental and physical safety. But then when they're starting their own business, they've asked me, like, how do I be myself with my business when I'm like all of these different people?
That's the difficulty I'm going through right now because, to be quite honest, I'm a very angry person, at least over the last couple of years. Very angry
I
because,
can be too.
yeah, I've just been very, especially as a sensitive person, you pick up on things, right? And you're just always wondering, especially as a creative person, why can't we do better?
Yeah.
It's all there. So trust me, I'm very angry and I'm able to I have that under control. I think everybody has those monsters and demons and stuff like that under control. But I think the difficulty I'm having is how do I show up at being myself by sprinkling a bit of that anger, because it is
Yes.
a legitimate anger, but it isn't coming from a point of pointing fingers and just berating people. I think it comes back down to being able to refine whatever that thing is and take it from the unprocessed form and refining it in a way that makes sense to you. And I
Yeah.
think you can sprinkle in both, but it just depends on how comfortable you are with being you. If you're showing up at your work and what I'm doing outside isn't conflicting with what I'm doing at work, then there's no problem.
Mm-hmm.
We can focus on the job that I'm here to do for the 8 hours and call it that. If you want to talk about my personal stuff, we could talk about that after a fact. And I think it comes down to self-confidence, being able to set boundaries. And that's what I'm saying is I think the most important thing out of everything we spoke about today is you have to know who you are.
Of course.
Because if you don't, people will come and have expectations of you, lack of boundaries,
Mhm.
emotional distress, all that crap starts to build up.
I really love what you said about like sprinkling in a little bit of that anger into what you do, because that's actually exactly the advice that I gave this person. They said, how do I bring my fabulousness to my business when in my professional life I don't really express that side of myself? And I said, how can you bring just a little piece
Yeah,
of
it's just
this
a tiny
drag
bit.
persona, like a tiny bit that like maybe even under your clothes you're wearing like something you like to wear as a drag queen, I don't know. But like nobody even necessarily needs to know, but when you have that little piece of confidence or that little sprinkle of that person in you that gives you confidence, then like people won't necessarily know what it is, but they'll see the transformation within you.
And it's the same idea of like when you're hearing a true artist speak, like the true definition of what artist is, you'll know
Yeah.
versus somebody that's just an artist,
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
like
for
the
sure. Another thing
clout-based
you mentioned
artist.
another thing you mentioned too was about anger and about like just like these past number of years, I feel like it's impossible unless you live under a literal rock to not experience what we're experiencing in today's society and not be at least a bit angry or at least a bit sad. I find that a lot of the time it happens to be one or the other. A lot of the time, if you struggle with anger, you don't necessarily go to the sad side and then vice versa. And for me, like I definitely struggle more so I don't like the word struggle, but I deal more with anger than I do with sadness. That's more the emotion that's prevalent in my life, and I think that it is so, so powerful to take those really strong feelings and to exactly as you said, to refine them throughout life and to be able to say, like, what is the root of this? What is something that I can control within this? What is something that this is trying to tell me? So that I can then carry that forward in life and either choose better directions, make more thoughtful decisions. And
Being intentional.
being intentional, exactly, and, like, also having that little bit of fire,
Hmm.
I feel it is fire, I feel like it
It
fuels a lot of my
it is, yeah.
passion. I feel like it fuels my passion, and I have to be careful with that, and I have to make sure that whatever I am passionate about, that it's something that I actually truly, truly believe in, and it's not something that I'm just placing my anger on right now to be able to let off some of that steam. And another thing with my own anger as well is to be able to let off steam and to actually learn how I let off steam. It might look different than
How do
how
you
other
let off
people do
steam?
it. Great question. I have a couple mechanisms. Um, the first thing, if I'm really feeling it in my body, I'll do something when it comes to my body. I'll like tap my chest like this, or I'll shake, or I'll jump, or I'll run, or I'll do something physical. That's if I'm having those like butterflies in the gut kind of feeling. And then if those are recurrent, where it doesn't matter if I move my body, I still have those feelings, then I'll do a ritual for release. So what I'll do is I will take my notepads and I'll just write out every single solitary thing that didn't go my way, everything that makes me angry and frustrated, everything that triggers me, and I'll write it all down. And then I'll step away for probably about 20 minutes, half an hour, feel those feelings, breathe into them. And then I'll take that same sheet of paper on the other side of it. I'll start writing out everything that went my way, everything that I
Mm,
love, everything that fills my cup, everything that I'm grateful for this month. And then when I'm finished with this letter, I don't want to attach myself to it. So then I crumple it up, I'll rip it, I'll burn it, I'll do whatever I need to do to
I
just
see.
kind of get rid of it. And maybe sometimes there's still some lingering feelings afterwards because writing that letter didn't solve the problem at hand, but I don't get mad at my anger in that sense. Where that's a funny thing to say, mad at your own anger, but I feel like sometimes when I am angry, I might sort of think to myself, like, why are you being so sensitive? Why do you care so much about this? And to have mechanisms to be able to just like let off a little bit of that steam, it allows me space from the problem to be able to process it and take whatever required action I need to take, or to not take any action if that's what's needed in the moment. But yeah, is that helpful?
No, it's very helpful. It's very similar to how I process some of my anger. I don't do the writing exercises, so I do two things mainly now, or for the last like last like 6 months I've been doing this. So, well, the last 6 months I've been doing like what I call acting exercises. So I'd go into the washroom, put my headphones on, and if I'm listening, I listen to a lot of like heavy music. So there's actually one song and an album called No Hope, KNOW, Hope, by The Color of Morale. And I would sing the lyrics, it's screaming, but I would mouth the lyrics of the song, especially one song called The Silver Lining that speaks. It just covers everything for me, personally speaking. But another thing I've been doing for years now is like practicing like metal vocals, like screaming.
Yeah.
And that in
I
itself,
do that in my car too.
yeah, it's been the most therapeutic thing ever. And I think by doing that and utilizing that, it allows me to actually express my anger, frustration vocally, which is something that in the past I'd hold on to it and I get that feeling in my chest. And then the only time you don't really express it is by physically hitting something, or like that's what a lot of people do. They end up letting it build up. They can't express it through their mouth, so they end up getting out by punching a wall or something.
Something awful. I love that. I actually didn't mention it, but I do literally the exact same thing when I'm in my car. That's another really great place for me to like meditate and to like process my emotions. Specifically when I'm driving somewhere I know the route. If I'm confused about where I'm going, I'm probably not doing much processing. Too difficult. But if I'm going somewhere familiar, I will have a full concert of just like every song on my playlist, whether it's screamo, whether it's punk, whether it's like country. Literally, my music taste is like all over the place. But having this variety in my music where it like really peaks and valleys, like it helps me bring up some emotions within me that like I wasn't necessarily cognizant of. The other day, actually, I was listening to a song that I've heard 1,000 times. It's called The High Road by Sir Woman. It's about letting go of things in a way that's more conducive to healing. So she says, like, you're running away from these feelings. You've been running away from them too long. And now it's time to just let yourself feel them. And that's how you will let them go. That's essentially the message of the song. I heard this song 1,000 times and I never understood that message until a few days ago when I heard it one more time and I was singing it. And as I was singing it, I was like, holy shit. And I started sobbing. I was literally crying. And I was like, I was not expecting any of these emotions right now. But I think music is really, really powerful for processing emotions. I love that you said the same thing too. Like, whether it's heavy metal, whether it's anger, whether it's your sadness, whatever it is within you, I think music is a really great way to be able to vocalize that or put words to things that you didn't otherwise know how to explain.
And allow yourself to feel certain things that you might not think are there. Like there's another song that I started listening to, that I've listened to years, that I started practicing in the mirror or whatever. I'm just pretending that I'm doing performance. And I'd visualize, there's a certain part of the song where there's like a big choir that starts singing and everything. I picture people that have supported me over the years. I picture performance. I picture my back to the it's like a surprise. I picture my back to the audience. So I'm just like doing it to the band. And I turn around at that point, and then everybody behind me that's singing as a choir are the people that supported me over the years.
Oh, I love
it's just that. Like, it's just emotionally, it's just like, oh my God, like the lyrics plus just the imagery. I think that's what I'm trying to get across. How can I apply the emotions and what I'm listening to imagery in my mind that makes sense to me?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time music can be very detrimental if you're taking images that someone else presents.
Yep.
We could talk about music and my issues with certain genres later on, but I think it's just basically reclaiming that power. And I think throughout our whole conversation, it's basically the importance of knowing yourself and reclaiming your power. I think that's the biggest takeaway. And I'll leave that to wrap everything up.
Yeah, no, I love that. I feel like if we don't actually put a cap on this at some point, we'll just keep talking. But I think that's so special. I think that like music is just so powerful. I also really agree with what you said about really putting yourself into the perspective of like the protagonist of the song and seeing if it actually resonates with you. I don't know how many people are out here listening to songs not recognizing the power of what you say, what you sing, what you listen to is actually manifesting in your life. Something I've actually even said on this podcast before is if you find yourself very tense or maybe you're like angry when you get to work, maybe you can take a look at your playlist and see like I'm listening to heavy metal on my way to work every day. Maybe that's why I'm angry, because music does have that power. But that being said, no judgment about metal. I listen to metal too, so I feel like just being able to augment your personality to and augment your tools to be able to suit whatever challenges you're dealing with at the moment is just so powerful. I also want to add, if you're a metalhead and also feeling angry all the time, you could definitely consider trying to explore different genres. However, as someone who tends to have an easier time connecting with anger, it's also been paired with the need to suppress that anger in order to protect myself and my loved ones. No one wants to be the angry person, but sometimes this act of suppression compounds within, and the more it compounds without having an outlet for release, the bigger these feelings get and the more it eventually leaks into your relationships. If you have anger within you, and all of us do, just some of us in different quantities, and you are looking at how to process your anger, metal music can be an excellent tool to help you actually get that anger out. See also rec rooms, high energy bursts of exercise, punching pillows, screaming in the middle of a forest. In saying this, it's important to be safe while you honor your anger. Find tools that won't be harmful to yourself or to others. Back to it. So, this has been a great chat. I'm so pleased, and I would honestly truly love to have you on again if there's another topic that you'd really like to talk about, any
For sure.
ideas.
I'd be down.
Please never be a stranger. Feel free to hit me up. Lastly, before I let you go, where is it that anybody listening, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
So you can visit my website, www.soindifferent.com, or visit my newly designed store, www.soindifferentshop.com, which was created and fueled by my anger and frustration this past week. It's amazing what you can get done when you actually when you actually put that anger and refine it through a stage. I was able to get a whole website done in 2 days, so I'm very happy about that. So
Love that
I can
so
find
much.
myself there.
Love that so much. Do you have like an email address attached to those websites in case somebody has questions for
Yeah,
you?
so if you can email me at chat@soindifferent.com or info@soindifferent.com as well.
Cool. Amazing. I will link all of that in the description for anybody listening. Thank you, listeners, so much for being here. I also want to thank you, Chad, as well, for being here with
And
me.
thank you. You are very charismatic. It's been a very enlightening conversation, and I'm surprised an hour has gone by. I felt like it was like 15 minutes, but I enjoyed every second. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's actually been an hour and a half, which is just crazy. Sorry I kept you so long.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But this was really great. I'm so thrilled. And to my audience listening, I will catch you in my conclusion. Cheers for now. Thank you so much for being here with me. And if you enjoyed today's topic, now is a great moment to subscribe. If you have any feedback about today's topic, please reach out to my social channels. I help creative entrepreneurs market their creations in a way that feels authentic. I have a self-study marketing program that covers basic and advanced marketing concepts with 9 modules and activity sheets. I also sell content creation templates to help you manage your social media with unlimited content creation ideas. And I also offer one-on-one marketing consulting services. Check out my socials and my website to learn more. If you're interested in working with me, please reach out via email. So that's social media if you're reaching out for my podcast, and email if you're reaching out for business. All relevant contact links are in the description, and thanks again for listening. Cheers for now. That was pretty good.